Seneca, in his timeless wisdom, gifts us with a profound insight into human nature in his correspondence with Lucilius. He points out how often our fears are more the fruits of our imagination than reflections of reality. This perspective opens a vast field for reflection on how we deal with our daily concerns. We live in a whirlwind of what-ifs, a series of conjectures that often occupy our minds, distancing us from the present. These questions, ranging from the possibility of betrayal in relationships to fears related to financial and professional stability, are like shadows clouding our well-being. Questions like, what if I get fired? Or what if my investment fails? Are common in our daily reflections. They plunge us into a sea of uncertainties where anxiety and fear often dominate us, creating catastrophic scenarios that may never come to pass. It's important to remember that as we focus on these worries, life goes on. The time spent in these daydreams is time that could be used to appreciate the present moment, to dedicate ourselves to what is truly within our reach. Seneca's message invites us to reflect on the importance of living in the now, of not letting the fear of the uncertain paralyze us or prevent us from enjoying the small joys of everyday life. By bringing these reflections to a diverse audience, from young people to adults, the idea is to generate a healthy curiosity about how we deal with our worries and how we can learn from the lessons of ancient philosophers to lead a more serene life focused on the present. By exploring these themes, we can awaken in listeners a deep interest in philosophy and a life more conscious and less anxious. The dichotomy between the desire to control the future and the reality of living in the present is a fascinating aspect of the human condition. The constant quest to predict and shape what is to come contrasts with the undeniable truth that we can only exist and act in the now. This tension between the present and the future is a rich and compelling theme, perfect for capturing the attention of a diverse audience. Reflecting on the future, while an inherent characteristic of being human, is often an exercise in imagination without guarantees. The future, in its essence, is a mental construct, a tapestry of possibilities and hypotheses that exist only in our minds. Meanwhile, the present is tangible and real, the only moment in which we truly have the power to act. However, planning for the future, distinct from worrying about it, is fundamental. This ability to anticipate and prepare is one of the pillars of human civilization. History is filled with examples where long-term planning resulted in remarkable achievements. The Cologne Cathedral is a sublime example of this long-range vision. Its construction, which spanned centuries, is a testament to the human capacity to think beyond an individual lifetime, to commit to projects that transcend generations. These historical examples can be used to illustrate how long-term planning not only shapes the world around us, but also reflects a deep belief in the continuity and progress of humanity. Projects like the moon landing or the exploration of Mars are modern emblems of this spirit, demonstrating our ongoing ability to dream big and achieve the seemingly impossible. By presenting these ideas, you can generate interest and curiosity in your audience, encouraging them to reflect on how their actions in the present can contribute to a better future. This approach also underscores the importance of fully living in the present while planning for the future, a balance that can be challenging but is essential for a full and meaningful life. The distinction between planning and worrying is crucial and provides an excellent starting point for deep reflection on how we manage our thoughts and actions regarding the future. You touch on a vital point. While planning is a constructive act, worrying tends to be destructive. Planning implies a structured and action-oriented thought process. It's a proactive approach to shaping our future based on goals, strategies, and practical steps. When we plan, we consider different scenarios and devise plans to effectively address them. This gives us a sense of control and preparedness, which is crucial for progress and achieving objectives. On the other hand, worry is often a repetitive cycle of negative thoughts that immobilizes us. As you rightly pointed out, worrying is trying to control the uncontrollable. It's a mental process that focuses on what if, leading to hypothetical scenarios that rarely materialize. Worry diverts us from the present, consuming our mental energy with fantasies that have no basis in reality. Eckhart Tolle is spot on when he says that worry pretends to be necessary, but is, in fact, unproductive. Finding the balance between planning and worrying is a constant challenge. Personally, I believe the key to this balance lies in mindfulness and acceptance. Practicing mindfulness helps us stay grounded in the present, recognizing our thoughts and feelings without getting carried away by them. By accepting that we can't control everything, we learn to focus our energy on actions we can take now, rather than getting lost in worries about the future. A practical way to apply this is to set clear goals and action plans, but also to cultivate flexibility and resilience to adapt as needed. This means recognizing when a thought is just unproductive worry and redirecting our attention to what we can do in the present moment. Sharing this perspective with others can be inspiring and helpful. Many people find themselves trapped in the worry cycle, and understanding the difference between worrying and planning can be an important step towards a more peaceful and focused life. The idea is to encourage people to recognize and move away from unhelpful worry thoughts, focusing more on practical action and living mindfully in the present moment. Yet many of us fixate our attention on the unknown and endlessly fantasize about things we cannot predict how they will unfold. Modern anxiety is fundamentally based on worries about things that will never happen. Some psychologists state that modern anxiety is based on 5 categories of worries, 4 of which are imaginary, and only the 5th relates to worries that have a real basis. But these occupy only 8% of our total daily worries. In other words, we are true masters at the art of worrying over nothing, and these worries feed present fears, whether real or imaginary, revealing a truth as evident as it is difficult to admit. The majority of our worries have no real basis, but that doesn't stop their effects on our day-to-day from being devastating. Seneca, with his Stoic insight, touches upon a fundamental aspect of the human experience, our propensity to worry about both past adversities and future ones, a trait that significantly differentiates us from other animals. Seneca's reflection highlights the complexity of the human mind, capable of time travel through memory and anticipation, but also reveals how this ability can become a source of suffering. While animals react to immediate dangers and, once safe, resume their activities without the baggage of ongoing fear, humans have the unique ability to relive past experiences and anticipate future ones, often with a negative bias. This tendency to dwell on negative past events or worry about potential future disasters can prevent us from fully living in the present. Seneca reminds us that, while it's natural to reflect on the past and plan for the future, it's important not to let these thoughts consume us. Constant rumination on past mistakes or excessive anxiety about possible unhappy futures can deprive us of the joy and serenity we could find in the present moment. When addressing these topics with your audience, it's crucial to emphasize the importance of learning from the past and planning for the future, but without allowing these thoughts to dominate our present. You can encourage the practice of techniques like mindfulness and meditation, which help center the mind in the now, reducing the tendency to overly worry about what has been or what is yet to come. By sharing these ideas, you can inspire your audience to seek a healthy balance between remembering, anticipating, and living in the present. This can help people better cope with anxiety and stress, promoting greater well-being and a more fulfilling and conscious life. In his correspondence with his friend Lucilius, later published as Letters from a Stoic, he countered this often exhausting and destructive stance towards the illusory domain of the future with Stoic reasoning, explaining why worrying about it is futile and advising on what to do instead. This video explores Seneca's antidotes for worry and unfounded fears. And before we continue, like this video, subscribe to the channel, and watch until the end to discover all the antidotes for worry. His metaphor of the mountain facing a storm is a beautiful and powerful way to illustrate the nature of time and our relationship with the past, present, and future. It highlights the unpredictability of life and the limitation of our ability to predict and control the future. The passage of time is a continuous and inexorable process. Indeed, the present quickly becomes the past, while the future is a constant unknown, always in motion, never fully accessible. Like the mountain in the storm, we are exposed to a series of events and circumstances that come our way in unexpected and often unpredictable ways. If you're committed to your personal growth, leave a comment. Write "Focus on Evolution" and today's date. If you're enjoying this, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and hit the like button on the video to support our work. The future, in essence, is a construction of the human mind, a series of projections and hypotheses based on our past experiences and current expectations. These projections range from spontaneous guesses to carefully calculated forecasts, but in the end, they are just ideas, subject to numerous variables and uncertainties. The reality of the future is that it always contains elements of the unknown and uncertainty, no matter how meticulously we try to predict or prepare for it. This understanding can be simultaneously challenging and liberating. On the one hand, recognizing our limitation in predicting the future can be disconcerting, as we like to feel that we have control over our lives and destinies. On the other hand, this acceptance can free us from the shackles of excessive worry about the future, allowing us to live more fully in the present. By sharing these reflections with your audience, you can encourage them to embrace the uncertainty of the future, not as a source of anxiety, but as an opportunity for mindful presence and acceptance. This can help people focus on what they can control, their actions and attitudes in the present, and to live their lives with more peace, adaptability, and openness to the new experiences that the future will inevitably bring. Julia's story is a vivid example of how unfounded worries, especially those rooted in past experiences, can significantly impact our ability to live in the present and face the future positively. Julia, affected by her previous experiences, finds herself trapped in a cycle of what-ifs, allowing fear and insecurity to cloud her perception of what is really happening in her new relationship with Denny. Julia's case illustrates a crucial aspect of human nature. We tend to carry the wounds and lessons of the past into our current experiences, often without realizing that each situation, each relationship, is unique. These worries not only impair Julia's ability to appreciate and nurture her current relationship, but they also create a cycle of self-sabotage where her insecurities can become self-fulfilling prophecies. For Julia, the challenge is to learn to separate the fears generated by past experiences from the reality of her present situation. This involves a journey of self-discovery, and often the help of therapy or counseling can be invaluable. It's crucial to recognize that while the past can inform, it should not dictate our present or future. By freeing herself from these unfounded worries, Julia could begin to build a relationship with Dennis based on trust, open communication, and the reality of what they share now, not on what happened in past relationships. This doesn't mean ignoring the past or not learning from it, but rather using those lessons in a way that strengthens rather than weakens her current experiences. Sharing Julia's story with your audience can help illustrate how anxiety and fear, based on assumptions and past experiences, can distort our view of the present and prevent us from fully embracing new opportunities. Moreover, it can inspire those facing similar challenges to seek a path of self-awareness and healing, paving the way for healthier and more fulfilling experiences in the present and future. Our reality is a mirror that reflects the emotions and expectations we carry. As Seneca pointed out, we are often prisoners of our own thoughts, creating storms in teacups. Imagine for a moment starting a new job. You carry with you the weight of past disappointments, approaching each new task with a mix of fear and distrust. It is here that Seneca's words come to life. Truth has its limits, but uncertainty roams unrestrained in the shadows of the anxious mind. In his correspondence with Lucilius, Seneca describes how the mind, cunning and sometimes deceptive, creates traps of despair where there is no reason for it. He illustrates how we distort ambiguous words or overestimate dislikes, inflating a conflict where there is only a temporary misunderstanding. Ask yourself, to what extent can the anger of an adversary really affect us? This human habit of excessive worry, far from being a mere irritation, has been linked to real health problems. We are, in essence, sickening ourselves for a future that does not yet exist, a spectre of unfounded fears. Yet there is a light of hope in Seneca's words. He challenges us. Are your afflictions real or the fruit of imagination? To counter this human tendency to worry, he suggests strengthening the mind, armed with truths and perceptions about reality. It's about changing our stance towards luck and misfortune, understanding that often what we fear is nothing more than shadows cast by our insecurities. If you're enjoying this, don't miss out on the opportunity. Purchase the ebook now. Stoicism in the 21st Century, Ancient Strategies for Modern Challenges, and unlock your prosperity, abundance, and improve your relationships with this ebook. Link in the pinned comment. This reflection leads us on a journey of self-discovery, where we learn to distinguish between the real and the imaginary, and to face life with a new perspective. Seneca reminds us that while we cannot control external events, we have total control over how we react to them. By adopting a more balanced and rational stance, we can not only better face challenges, but also find serenity and contentment in the small joys of everyday life. Seneca, in his reflections, points to a crucial aspect of the human condition: our propensity to overestimate adversities and give excessive weight to the negative consequences of future events. To deepen this analysis and make it more relevant and engaging for your audience, let's explore how this tendency influences our perception of reality and our ability to face challenges. Seneca, in writing to Lucilius, highlights a fundamental truth. Despite the misfortunes that surrounded him, he remained resilient. This observation underscores an inherent human capacity to face and overcome adversity. When we reflect on our own experiences, we realize that we often exaggerate our anxieties, especially when recalling difficulties we have already overcome. Consider, for example, the anxiety surrounding an important exam. Many of us tend to catastrophize, thinking things like, if I fail this exam, my life will be ruined, or if I don't pass, then the criticisms I receive are true. I am a failure. However, these beliefs are distortions of reality. They do not reflect the truth, as the feared consequences are mere speculations, not concrete facts. The root of this fear, as Seneca illustrates, lies in our beliefs about failure. We believe that failing at something signifies total defeat, but this is a limited view. In truth, failure is often a step on the path of learning and personal growth. It's vital to recognize that most of the feared scenarios never materialize. And even if some setbacks occur, they are rarely as devastating as we imagine. Seneca encourages us to reassess our beliefs and expectations. He suggests that, instead of focusing on negative outcomes, we should cultivate a mindset of resilience and continuous learning. After all, life is not a series of tests with definitive passes and fails, but rather a continuous journey of experiences and discoveries. By adopting this perspective, we start to see challenges not as threats, but as opportunities to strengthen our character and skills. This shift in mindset allows us to face adversities with greater confidence and balance, and above all, with the understanding that the value of life is not determined by isolated successes or failures, but by the journey as a whole. Even if some catastrophic beliefs about the future are plausible, they have yet to materialize. In the same letter, Seneca urges his friend Lucilius to be wary of external influences regarding his personal situation. According to Seneca, it's better to trust in ourselves and to consult our own feelings independently, as we know our affairs better than anyone else. We are easily swayed by the opinions and views of others, and there are many people with narrow and even delusional views of reality, claiming they can predict the future and promptly plan their worries accordingly. The problem arises when we want to control the future. To control the future, the mind tries to think of it as if it were the present. The mind somehow thinks that by calculating all possible options, it will gain control. In the end, if we knew exactly what would happen, then we would indeed have an advantage in terms of our own actions. We would know, for example, when our relationships would end and which stocks to buy to get rich. But the future is still uncertain. We can break down our tasks into manageable parts. We can work in chunks that greatly facilitate focus, setting aside the end result for a while and thinking only in terms of hours, sessions, or days. This relieves us from the overwhelming burden of goals that seem almost impossible to reach, while still working on them in the best way possible. Worrying only hinders us from acting, and the more we live in the future, the more our anxiety sabotages our efforts to make a change. We can break down our tasks into manageable parts. We can work in chunks that greatly facilitate focus, setting aside the end result for a while and thinking only in terms of hours, sessions, or days. This relieves us from the overwhelming burden of goals that seem almost impossible to reach, while still working on them in the best way possible. Worrying only hinders us from acting, and the more we live in the future, the more our anxiety sabotages our efforts to make a change. As written in the Bible, in Matthew, "Do not worry about tomorrow." In his letter to Lucilius, Seneca urges him not to conclude too quickly about the nature of what fortune provides. Fortuna, in this case, refers to the ancient deity Fortuna, the goddess of chance, luck, and fate. Given our human ignorance, not only about what will happen and how these events will unfold, but also about the nature of these events and how exactly they will affect our lives, it is better to be cautious in judging fate. In some cases, the bad luck we anticipate actually materializes, like in the story of the old Chinese farmer and his wild horses. One day, the horses escaped, and the neighbors lamented his misfortune, to which the farmer replied, "Maybe." The next day, the horses returned, bringing other wild horses, and the neighbors congratulated him on his good fortune. "Maybe," replied the farmer. The next day, the farmer's son tried to ride one of the wild horses, but was kicked and broke his leg. "What misfortune," said the neighbors sympathetically. "Maybe," replied the farmer. The following day, military authorities came to the village to conscript the farmer's son into the army, but upon seeing his broken leg, they let him pass. Then, the neighbors congratulated the old farmer, saying how lucky he was that his son had escaped conscription. Life can be much happier if we simply don't know what's coming, but it is comforting to remember that every problem carries with it an opportunity. "Even bad luck is fickle," said Seneca. Therefore, his antidote is to keep an open mind about the future. knowing that we cannot judge the nature of an event before it happens and its consequences are revealed. Let's then examine the issue carefully. It's likely that some problems will happen to us, but this is not a present fact. How often has the unexpected happened? How often have we been surprised by positive events we didn't anticipate? We should not let the slightest sign of adversity throw us into panic. It is essential to mention that worrying is terrible for our health. Worry comes from a place of fear and only generates more fear, becoming a vicious downward spiral. The chronic anxiety resulting from worry affects the immune system and can lead to physical illnesses. And when we become more susceptible to diseases, we give ourselves yet another thing to worry about. Being aware of the devastating consequences, knowing that not everything is as it seems, and that fate is as capricious as a summer storm, will make us realize that our judgments about future and even present events are often mistaken, and our fears about them unfounded. And even if it's certain that misfortune is on its way, if it hasn't arrived yet, why spend time suffering in advance in our imagination? Now comment on what's keeping you awake at night, and if it really is worth your worry. If you like this, subscribe and hit the like button.